Good day, Deep and Word family. Welcome to day 143 of our Bible study review. Today we're going through chapters 22 through 24 of the book of Jeremiah. Chapter 22 opens up with a warning of impending judgment upon the current king of Judah, right? The southern kingdom. That's who Jeremiah is ministering to, prophesying to. So let's just open it up and start reading. It says, "Thus says Yahuah, go down to the house of the king of Judah and speak this word there and say, hear the word of Yahuah, O king of Judah, who sits on the throne of David, you and your servants and your people who enter by these gates." Verse 3, "Thus says Yahuah, execute justice and righteousness and deliver the robbed out of the hand of the oppressor, and do no wrong or violence to the stranger, the fatherless, or the widow, neither shed innocent blood in this place. For if you indeed do these things, then kings sitting on the throne of David will enter by the gates of this house, riding in chariots and on horses, he and his servants and his people. But if you do not obey these words, I swear by myself." So he is taking a vow on his own name, right? Says Yahuah, "that this house will become a desolation." So Yahuah keeps speaking through Jeremiah, and he's telling the kings who sit upon the throne of David, right? He says, this beautiful place, Jerusalem, my holy city, Zion, right? He goes, it's like Lebanon to me. It is beautiful. But if you disobey my commandments, I will utterly destroy this place, right? If he made all things in creation, don't you think he can remake it over? He's not concerned about the natural things. He's more concerned about the upkeep of the spiritual things, because he is spirit and he wants his people to execute his righteous laws. And then he reiterates again, other nations will come by this place that has been, destroyed, right? Which is Jerusalem. And they will say, why has this happened? Why has this happened to this land and to this people? And it will be said, because they have forsaken the covenant of their Elohim. And that's why this place will become a complete and utter desolation. Verse 11, it says, "For thus says Yahuah concerning Shallum, the son of Josiah," right? The king of Judah. Now, Josiah died, but he had several sons, and there were a few of them that sat upon the throne of David, right? And it says, "Who went from this place, he will not return anymore, but will die in the place where they have led him captive, and will see this land no more." And then it goes on to say in verse 13, "Woe to him who builds his house with unrighteousness and his chambers with injustice, who uses his neighbor's services without wages and gives him nothing for his work." Again, if you want to go back to Leviticus chapter 19, verse 13, our Heavenly Father never endorses slavery. Ever does he endorse it, right? It is unrighteous to withhold wages from someone. Now, if someone was an indentured servant, it's because they were so poor they couldn't pay off their debt. So they sold themselves as a service to pay off that debt. And so he's essentially saying a man who builds his house upon unrighteousness, right? Unjust ways, right? And receiving bribes, just all kinds of wickedness. He says your house will fall. And then he says right here, "Did not your father eat and drink and do justice and righteousness, and then it was well with him?" So he's talking to the current king, and he's talking about the forefathers who were faithful, and because they upheld his righteous laws, all was well with them, right? And it says, "He judged the cause of the poor and the needy, then it was well with him. Is this not what it means to know me?" Right? That's what Yah says. He goes, is this not what it means to know me, to be in covenant with me, right? Is to love me with all of your heart, your soul, your strength, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. Isn't that what it means, right? He's like, you don't know me anymore. And I can tell that you don't know me because you don't love the image bearers next to you. Verse 17, it says, "But your eyes and your heart are intent only on your covetousness and on shedding of innocent blood and on oppression and violence. Therefore, thus says Yahuah concerning Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, the king of Judah." Now, Josiah had several sons, all right? And so we see that Jehoiakim is one who had the throne at this point, and he was also a servant of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. If you go back to 2 Kings chapter 24, this is what you will see. Now, Jehoiakim, he rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, and so he died, and then his son Jehoiachin, right, Chin, reigned in his place instead. And so because Jehoiakim was evil and wicked and he was not upholding the righteous laws, well, he was able to go to the grave on behalf of Nebuchadnezzar. Our Heavenly Father allowed that to happen. Why? Because as a king, it's your duty to uphold the righteous laws of the one true king in the true tabernacle up above, right? You are entrusted to bring the kingdom down here upon the earth, and you are called to know the law and teach the law to the kingdom citizens. And he did not do that. He was wicked. And so the command was not to take up a lament for him. Do not cry, do not sob over him, because he is wicked. He is not righteous, right? He is not upholding the covenant. And so his son reigned in place instead. Verse 24, it says, as I live, says Yahuah, though Coniah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah. So it's still talking about when Jehoiakim was king. And it says, even if his son were the signet on his right hand, right? The signet ring, which is what they use to close scrolls. He's saying, even if your son was the signet ring, he's like, I would take off the signet ring and destroy it, right? He says he does not care if there is no king sitting upon the throne of David if they are not righteous. He says, I will utterly destroy them. Let's go back to 1 Kings as a refresher as to what Yahuah said to King Solomon, right? So King Solomon, he built the temple, right? And then he wanted to have a prayer of dedication, right? The temple was being cleansed and all of the people were coming up together, and he was praying out to Yahuah. And so here we are, 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 25. Therefore, Yahuah of Israel, now keep what you have promised to your servant David by my father, saying, you will not fail to have a man sit before me on the throne of Israel, so long, right? There's the conditional speech. So long as your sons take heed to their way, that they walk before me as you have walked before me. Now, O Elohim of Israel, let your word, I pray, be fulfilled, which you spoke to your servant David, my father, right? So the promise of keeping a man upon the throne was only if they kept the covenant, right? And they were righteous and just. So the chapter ends talking about Coniah. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. And it says right here, thus says Yahuah, write down this childless man, a man who will not prosper in his days, for no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting on the throne of David and ruling anymore in Judah. So we see that, he keeps to his promise, but we have an obligation on our side as well. And because they were not keeping their end, well, no one is going to be sitting upon the throne of David. Chapter 23 opens up with this, warning of impending judgment upon the priests and the prophets, right? The shepherds who are supposed to be shepherding the people back to Yah, but they're failing, all right? And so it says, woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, says Yahuah. Therefore, thus says Yahuah, the Elohim of Israel, against the shepherds that feed my people. You have scattered my flock and have driven them away and have not visited them. I am about to punish you for the evil of your deeds, says Yahuah. I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all of the countries wherever I have driven them and bring them again into their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. And I also will set up shepherds over them who will feed them, and they will fear no more, nor be dismayed, nor will they be missing, says Yahuah. And then we transition into who the greatest shepherd is, right? He just said he's going to gather those whom are scattered all across the earth, right? And he says, I will set up better shepherds, right? Because they have failed. They have failed. So it says right here, verse 5, the days are coming, says Yahuah, that I will raise up for David a righteous branch. That is our Messiah. That is Yeshua. Some people say Yehoshua. Some people say Yahusha. You know what I'm talking about, okay? And it says, and he will reign as king and deal wisely. Now it's a peek again into the millennial reign, and shall execute justice and righteousness in the earth. See, this is the righteous king who will not fail. He will sit upon the throne of David, and he will do what is supposed to be done in that seat. And it says, in his days, Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell safely. And this is the name by which he will be called. It says, Yahuah, our righteousness, is what our Messiah will be called. You can't fight what it says in scripture that his name will be, right? His name, if you want to go back to the ancient Paleo Hebrew, it's Yahuah, right? Yahuah, meaning salvation of Yah. And so it says that his name will be the righteousness of Yah. That's what his name will be, right? And so that's what we will call him. He's the king. He's Melchizedek, right? He's going to have a priesthood, a royal priesthood. Hello, that's you and I, okay? We're called his royal priesthood, right? And we are auditioning. We are working some things out right now. We are being prepared for this glorious millennial reign. If you sit back and do nothing, right? There is a system. There are some who will be greater and some who will be least. Now, some will not participate in the ruling and reigning because they did nothing, because they did absolutely nothing. Although you may be saved, right? He's not going to entrust you to rule and reign because he's going to be teaching and speaking his law. And those who speak against his laws now, you might be a pooper scooper. You might, shovel up the manure for the first 100 years, just to get a piece of that humble pie, for speaking against his righteousness, right? Because when he rules and reigns for 1,000 years, what do you think? There's no such thing as a kingdom without laws. No such thing, right? The Antichrist, right? And Satan is called the lawless one. Our Messiah is not going to have a lawless kingdom, right? That's what we see right now. That's what we see going on right now. When he comes, he's bringing righteousness and justice, and he's going to execute that thing, right? And those who are in disagreement with him and speaking against it, right? He may have mercy on you. You may be saved, right? But hey, pooper scooper for the first 100 years. I mean... All right, y'all, back to the text. So we see in verses 7 all the way through 8, it says, no longer will it be said as Yahuah lives, as the one who brought the sons of Israel out of Egypt, but it will be said as Yahuah lives, who has brought up the scattered ones from all across the earth back to their home. That's what the story will be when our Messiah comes, right? These stories are going to be told for 1,000 years, right? For the flesh and blood who repopulate the earth, the stories are going to be told about what he did for those who were scattered all across the earth. And then they started reading his word, and they started coming to the truth of the Torah, and they realized who they were in Messiah, and they started walking in his righteous ways. And then they're going to see what the reward for that is. They have these heavenly, kingly positions next to the king. Then in verse 9, we see that Jeremiah speaks about these shepherds, right? The lying shepherds, right? The lying prophets. He says, my heart is broken within me because of the prophets. All of my bones shake. He says, I am like a drunken man and like a man overcome by wine because of Yahuah and because of his holy words. For the land is full of adulterers and for the land mourns because of the curse, right? So the prophets, the priesthood, everyone is just compromised and the land is full of iniquity because of it, because the leaders have gone astray. And it says, for both prophet and priest are profane. And the job of a priest is to know what is profane and what is holy and to keep the people from the profane things. But instead, they were leading the people towards the profane things. And it says, indeed, in my house I have found their wickedness, says Yahuah. He says, I will bring up disaster upon them because of it. And he says, in addition, I have seen folly in the prophets of Samaria. They prophesied by Baal and caused my people Israel. So now he's talking about the northern kingdom, right? The 10 northern tribes. He says, they caused my people to err. I have seen also among the prophets of Jerusalem a horrible thing. So the entire kingdom, right? Entire kingdom, north and south, right? They have failed miserably. And it says they commit adultery and walk in lies. They also strengthen the hands of the evildoers so that no one repents from his wickedness, right? So they're just allowing lawlessness to abound. They are not correcting anyone, right? They're not confronting anyone about their sin. They're just letting it be, right? And you as the priesthood, you who are aware of the salvation of Messiah, if you don't open up your mouth and speak and confront sin, shine your light in every dark place, if you do not speak, it says you are strengthening the evil because you're not speaking, right? Who will hear it? Who will know unless you speak? He says, all of them are like Sodom to me, and her inhabitants are as Gomorrah. This is what he's calling his people, right? Like the city he destroyed because of their wickedness, right? Because of same-sex relations and because of all sorts of wickedness, right? And America is full of that abomination. It is full of it, right? And so if he doesn't judge America, he will have to go back and apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Because I'm sure America is 10 times worse, right? What you see going on in these United States is, I'm sure, 10 times worse than it was in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So if this continues, right? And those who are a part, right? A part of the covenant people, right? And you don't speak out. You don't speak out against these things. Now, I have family members who live this lifestyle, but when they ask me to come to, their weddings, I say no. And it's not because I don't love them. It's because I do love them. It's because I love him more than anyone or anything else. I love him more, right? And I cannot sit and agree with something that he says is an abomination, right? Abomination is a strong word, right? And we need to understand what that means, right? According to the Father, right? He is the king. He is the one who sets up righteous laws. We don't get to, say what is righteous, right? We didn't make a doggone thing. We have the ability to procreate, but that is only because of him, right? We have nothing. We are nothing apart from him. And if we don't realize that, then we're in big trouble. But I tell people the truth because I love them. Absolute truth is loving them onto salvation, right? So with that understanding, if you know who you are, you're the royal priesthood. And so if you don't know what is profane and what is holy, right, then you need to sit back and you need to, be disciplined first. You need to understand who you are. You need to understand what your job is, because if you don't, then you will pervert your job. You will pervert the plans and purposes on your life, and you will be offending him, right? And his anger will be burning fury against you. And you don't want to do that, okay? And so he says, concerning the prophets, right, who lie, he says, I will feed them with wormwood, and I will make them drink poisonous waters. He says, do not listen to the words of the false prophets. He says, they lead you into vanity. They speak a vision of their own heart and not out of the mouth of Yah. They still say to those who despise me, Yahuah has said, you will have peace. And they say to everyone who walks after the imagination of their own heart, no evil will come upon you, right? Do you not hear people like that today? There are many who are siding with the world and they're saying, Yah is love, and no matter what, you're just saved because you confessed Messiah and you're good to go. You can continue to do however you please. And that is a lie from the pit of hell. Y'all, the first priest unto Yah was Lucifer, and he perverted the purposes on his being. And so he was disqualified. And the same will be true for you and I. If we don't know what our job is and we don't do it, right? We don't do it to the best of our ability, we will be disqualified. We will be disqualified from his priesthood and from the millennial reign. I'm going to give some scripture to tie this in. It's going to be Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. What knowledge? The knowledge of the tree of life, the knowledge of the Torah, right? Our Messiah is the Torah. He's the Word who put on flesh. He is the tree of life. And because those don't know him, because they don't read his word, they are destroyed. And it says, because you have rejected knowledge, because you have rejected him, you have rejected the truth of his word, I will reject you from being my priest, just as he did Lucifer. If he rejected him, he'll do the same to you if you reject his truth. All right, let's keep reading in Jeremiah chapter 23, and let's go to verse 20. It says, the anger of Yahuah will not turn back until he has performed and executed the thoughts of his heart. In the latter days, you will understand it perfectly. So this leads me to believe that, during the millennial reign and also when New Jerusalem comes down, there are certain things we will just understand at that point. I know we have many questions right now, but when we live through the millennial kingdom and when the Father comes down, I do believe during that time, right, we're the priesthood, and the priesthood back in the Mosaic covenant, right, the priesthood was ordained for 7 days, right? And then the number 7 represents the millennial kingdom, right? The Sabbath day, right? We have these 6 days of war and unrest, which represents the time that we're in right now. But when we enter into the millennial reign, there are certain things we're just going to understand at that point. And not just out of happenstance, y'all. There are still many things that he's working out in our lives right now. And even during the millennial reign, right? We will have the greatest teacher ever, and he's going to be teaching us the truth of Torah. None of us have it together 100%. I have brothers and sisters who believe differently on different things. That does not break my fellowship with them, but he is going to correct us all. His priesthood, he is going to sanctify us even further during that time, and he's going to prepare us, right, to present us to the Father, spotless and blameless before the Father. And so the rest of the chapter begs the question, how long will the hearts of the prophets and the priests, right? How long will they prophesy lies? How long will they teach my people to not remember my name and remember the name of Baal? He's saying, those who keep on this path and lead my people astray, those who say the word of Yahuah when it has not left his mouth, he says, those who speak falsely and those who keep causing my people to stumble, he says, I will utterly destroy you. I believe the same is true now, right? Church buildings who have false shepherds and false teachers who are going along with the world and strengthening the hand of the evildoers by agreeing with their wickedness. I truly believe that supernaturally those buildings are going to collapse. Their platforms are going to fall. They're not going to have a way of leading people astray anymore. He said it then. I believe he's going to do it again, right? He's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. So those who are false and those who know that they are false and those who are teaching others falsely, they will be destroyed. Now we are into chapter 24, and in chapter 24, it says that Yahuah, sets this vision of 2 baskets before the temple of Yahuah, and the baskets are full of figs. Now there's a basket of good figs, and there's a basket of bad figs. And at this time, Nebuchadnezzar is already pulling, like the noblemen and all of the strong men, he's pulling people gradually away from Jerusalem and taking them captive into Babylon. And so Yahuah asked him, he goes, what do you see? And Jeremiah tells him, I see good figs and I see bad figs. And this is what Yahuah says, like these good figs, so I will acknowledge those who are carried away captive to Judah, whom I have sent out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans for their good. For I will set my eyes upon them for good, and I will bring them again to this land. I will build them up and not pull them down, and I will plant them and not pluck them up. I will give them a heart to know me. So he's saying, I'm going to take out their stony heart, and I'm going to give them a heart of flesh so that they will know me. He says that I am Yahuah, and they will be my people, and I will be their Elohim, and they will return to me with their whole heart. So he's saying those who learned their lesson, those whom I am allowing to go into Babylonian captivity, there's a handful that I, set out for good, for them to return back to the land, right? And they're going to learn their lesson, and they're not going to have this issue of idolatry anymore. And that is referring to the Second Temple period, when they're allowed to come back after the Babylonian exile, go back to Jerusalem and rebuild, right? Build another temple, the Second Temple. So that's what it's referring to right now, right? But they're not exiled altogether quite yet. So on the contrary, this is what he is speaking about the bad figs. He says, I will forsake Zedekiah, the king of Judah, and all of his officials and the rest of Jerusalem who remain in this land, and those who dwell in the land of Egypt. He goes, those who try to escape this judgment, right? Those who go against my hand, he says, they are the bad figs. And he says, I will destroy them. And he says right here, and I will make them a horror and an evil to all of the kingdoms of the earth, to be a reproach and a byword and a taunt and a curse in all the places wherever I shall drive them. I will send the sword and famine and pestilence along them until they are consumed from off of the land. So that's the news. If you decide to walk in his righteous ways and follow his commands and walk by the Spirit, he brings you back to the land. He brings you back to the land of your inheritance. We are grafted in to the one new man, right? And we are grafted into Israel. The renewed covenant, or the New Testament, is made with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. There is no one else that he makes this covenant with. So you have to be in that group. You have to be in that family. And the only way to remain in that family, y'all, is remaining true, right? You have to be led by his Spirit, right? When he gives you a new heart, a heart of flesh that wants to obey him, that you actually do, right? So then you're a good fig. But if you're a bad fig, guess what? Not only will you get off of the land, right? But he's talking about the earth as a whole. You will have no part of the millennial kingdom, and you will not see New Jerusalem. Deep in Word family, that's all that I have for you today. Until tomorrow, Yah bless.